How are you lovely people doing today? My name is John. Welcome to another beautiful episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. This is the only series on YouTube where I take your questions about the zombie storyline and answer them. Whether you have a big, a small, or a simple question, I'm more than happy to answer it. So either tweet me with your questions at JohnnyJ25, and maybe while you're there, drop me a follow. That would always be appreciated. Or you can leave them down in the comments below. Either way, you may be in the next episode. Without further ado, let's begin. Kicking things off, we have a question from Ballistic Banana John, who asks, what happened to the 5 group? Did they die in the explosion, or are they still kicking zombie butts to this day? Also, was Castro evil during the outbreak, and why was JFK so calm about the missile crisis? He treated it as if it was just another event. Also, keep up the great work. So before we get into your question of whether or not they survived 5, let's discuss the politics behind the scene, and then that'll answer some of the other questions you had. So, was Castro evil during the event? Yeah, Castro was technically evil during the event. It was shortly after the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was the brutal dictator of Cuba. That's just who he is. But then why was JFK so calm about the Cuban Missile Crisis? It wasn't that he was calm about the missile crisis. He just wanted to keep the atmosphere at a calm, sort of level-headed feeling. He didn't want things to get fired up. He didn't want things to get heated. You'll notice that McNamara gets a little bit aggressive when he speaks to Castro, and then JFK has to calm him down. This is just because they don't want things to get out of control to make Castro upset and then drive him closer to the Soviet Union, only making the problem worse. They're trying to negotiate things so that they don't have another event like the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's really just a big game of politics, especially when you consider that we have all these leaders in the room, such as President John F. Kennedy, Secretary of Defense McNamara. We also have Fidel Castro, the dictator of Cuba, and then the person who lost the most recent presidential election, but then went on to become the president, Richard Nixon. So it's really just a big game of politics. Now, did they survive, or are they still kicking butt to these days? No, they somehow escaped the Pentagon. We don't exactly know how. My suspicion is that they basically killed all the zombies, or they survived long enough for whoever, the Secret Service or somebody working for the president, to get them out. They must have had some kind of escape plan, some kind of evacuation plan in case things went wrong. They were able to survive pretty well in the Pentagon, and they must have been able to get out somehow. Now keep in mind, the world goes on after this event, so news doesn't spread about zombies breaking into the Pentagon. All that we really can draw from this event is that the Americans were doing research with Element 115. It was all below the Pentagon. Things got out of hand, and then that's when they really just destroyed all of the stuff going on in there, killed all the zombies, cleaned everything up, and then moved their research elsewhere like Griffin Station. But word never got out. Our characters survived, and of course JFK unfortunately goes on to be assassinated. Like, history still goes on. Fidel Castro escapes, McNamara escapes, Nixon goes on to be president, JFK unfortunately gets assassinated. That's just how things happen. Politics moves on. The zombie storyline does exist in our regular world, but things just take a different spin as time goes on. At the moment though, history is still as we know it. Moving on, we have a question from Maxis Ryder, or at Maxis_935, and he asks, why in Kinder der Tod does Richtofen say, maybe they stole this from Japan when you activate the second rock? So the second rock is Element 115, and basically, this came from Japan, or more specifically, Shinonuma. There was a meteor that had crashed down onto Shinonuma, which contained Element 115. This is why Group 935 started to do their research in Shinonuma. They had the element right there, they had an ample supply that they could easily just take, and then some was moved from Shinonuma to Kinder der Toten. Richtofen was just unaware of this, so when he found the hunk of Element 115 lying around Kinder der Toten, he suspected that it came from Japan, more specifically Shinonuma. So that's what's going on when Richtofen says that as you activate the second rock. Now, why he says stole as opposed to maybe they got it is unclear. I'm not sure why he used the word stole. That seems like a fairly aggressive word to use. Like, they didn't really steal it. It was Group 935's Element 115. They had already been working on it. But either way, the rock comes from Japan because that's where the meteor crashed down. We're going to end today's episode with a question from Daniel Jasinski, or at Jasinski_Daniel, who asks, why did America want to reverse engineer the wonder weapons? During World War II, the Germans were leading research with Element 115. Group 935 had created many things like the Wunderwaffe as well as the teleporters. If anybody understood Element 115 the best, it was the Germans. So Once World War II ended, the Americans were able to get their hands on many abandoned Group 935 projects. Now, the purpose of reverse engineering something is to get a better understanding of the technology and how it works. The Americans were not as advanced as the Germans with working with the elements, so once they got their hands on all these devices, they wanted to figure out how it worked, they want to know how they can improve it, and they want to know how they can build upon it. So they took things like the ray gun, and they took things like the teleporters and the Wunderwaffes, and they deconstructed it, and they studied how the parts and how the elements worked together to create such fantastical devices. So by reverse engineering the Wonder Weapons, what they were able to do was create their own teleporters and create the Winter's Howl and create ginormous teleporters that move men and machines from the Earth to the Moon, as well as create things like the Wave Gun. If it wasn't for reverse engineering the Wonder Weapons, the Americans would not have been able to create such great weapons that they had that we've seen featured in maps like 5 as well as the map Moon. So that's why they reverse engineered all these weapons. They wanted to get a better understanding of how it worked and how they can create more stuff using Element 115. That's going to wrap up this episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A, though. If you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a like and possibly subscribe. I'm going to be uploading multiple episodes of the Zombie Storyline Q&A every week, and if you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Remember, you can leave your comments down below, or you can tweet me at JohnnyJ25 with your questions. Maybe while you're there, drop me a follow. That'd be much appreciated. Have a wonderful day, and bye.